what it say? I'm sorry. See what it say? Okay. So let's say it's big top four. Oh, do you know the mark on there? The color tip on there? I'm sorry. It's fine. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us at our 19th annual Voices That Count Forum. My name is Sharon Williams, and I'm the Associate Director at the Virgin Islands University Center for Excellence in Developmental Disabilities, VIUC. It is an awesome honor for me to welcome you back to our in-person forum. And it's great to see so many of you that were here this morning return for the afternoon session. I want to thank the candidates who are here, who took time out of their busy schedules to join us. I would like to bring greetings from Ms. Shamika Thomas. She's our Executive Director, who could be to be with us here today. Greetings are also coming from Dr. Karen Harris Brown, who is the Dean of School of Education, Provost Dr. Kendra Harris, President Dr. Sophia George, and members of the VIUC Consumer Advisory Council and the Virgin Islands Assistive Technology Foundation Board of Directors. Voices That Count is created and hosted by VIUC. During election years, the forum uniquely brings together people with disabilities, members from the legislative and executive branches of the Virgin Islands government, and the community at large. And those would include advocates, consumers, caregivers, private businesses, and organizations. And what we do is try to address the challenges and issues faced by persons with disabilities. Discussions centered on improvements in the quality of life for people with disabilities in the Virgin Islands are the core focus of today's forum. With joint community partners, Voices That Count ensures that the voices of people with disabilities, advocates, their caregivers, and family members are heard, and that the Virgin Islands community and policymakers gain an understanding of the issues and barriers people with disabilities face. At this time, I would like to take the opportunity to acknowledge our co-sponsors, which are the Territorial ADA Coordinator, the Disability Rights Center of the Virgin Islands, and the Association for Independent Living. I would like to also acknowledge VIUC staff. With us, we have here today Khalifa Thomas, and she is the Assistant Director, and she is out of the office of St. Thomas. We also have Enoch Noel, who is the Assistive Technology Specialist, and he's in the back as also the IT. Here on St. Croix, we have Ms. Denisha Joseph, who is the administrative staff, and I think most of you have met them when you're coming in here doing the registration table, as well as Mr. Gerard Evelyn, who serves as the Assistive Technology Assistant here on St. Croix. Today's session will be live streamed or recorded and made available on VIUC's YouTube channel and Facebook. Thank each of you for coming, and we hope to have a very productive and engaging discussion. Next, I would like to invite co-moderator, Ms. Marsha Green, to talk about the rules for today's forum. Thank you.
Good afternoon again, and welcome back to the second part of the Voices That Count Forum 2024. The Voices That Count Forum The Voices That Count Forum's goal is to obtain responses from all the candidates seeking office in the 2024 general election. Again, the goal is to enable the voter to make informed selections from among the slate of candidates. Rules. We expect a response to each question from each candidate. As we pose our questions, we will rotate among the candidates to enable that no candidate is consistently responsible for being the first or last person to respond. Each answer will be limited to a time frame of 2 minutes, and challenges or rebuttals will be limited to 1 minute. In the event a candidate's response involves or is aimed at another candidate, we will allow 1 minute for a rebuttal. If the Voices That Count committee chooses to alter the time limitations for a particular question or questions, we as the moderators will announce this change beforehand. We aim for this forum to be informative and expect all candidates will behave in a respectful manner. As we begin the forum, we ask that each candidate, when called upon, to please identify themselves by name, political affiliation, and ballot number. Again, that's name, political affiliation, and ballot number. Thank you, and best of luck to all of the 2024 candidates. So I'm one of the co-moderators, Marsha Green, and we also have Mr. Gerard Evelyn. Ms. Evelyn will start us off with some ADA-related questions.
Good afternoon and welcome again. We're going to start questions, you could say from my immediate right, going to my left. The first question is, as an elected official, what is your plan for ADA compliance in the Virgin Islands? Please respond by giving us your name and ballot number.
Good day, good afternoon rather. My name is Oakland Benton, I'm number 5 on the ballot. My political affiliation is I'm an independent candidate vying for the office of senator. My background is one from being the chief of police, the next senator of the Virgin Islands in the 33rd legislature, an advisor to CARICOM and the OECS countries, and a special assistant to the Federal Bureau of Investigation at this time. As an individual, when it comes to ADA, being in the 33rd legislature with members who I serve with, there was a robust discussion and passion to make sure that the services, when it came to the ADA, were fulfilled. Unfortunately, all that goes through and feels it knows it better than many were not heard in some of the instances. The agencies of oversight under the ADA, while they tried to probe for certain things to get done, when it came to the executive branch, it became a pushback. And to date, there is no real comprehension of how significant the ADA services are for a lot of our loved ones. And with that, what we've forgotten is that once a man, twice a child in some instances, and for those who fall within the category of family members that go through this every day, your voice is unheard, it falls on deaf ears. And as we go forward today, I do pray that we also have the hearing impaired who is viewing, that they too also can hear and read what's going on and understand. And we have now moved, as my feeling and my conviction, because I'm listening to the question, this is a question that I think would have been answered already by the services to be provided as far as the shortfalls that members that falls in the category are not receiving. We are, in fact, individuals of consciences. I brought doctors to this territory. I brought individuals who are willing to build the facilities to enable better access, better attend certain programs, but just limited to one program, and the atmospheres of the government and governance in your role that you are qualified to be employees of as well. So you're actually a burden to the government.
10 seconds.
And being a burden to the government that I don't see. My passion is that fight will go in the direction that it should. My name is Oakland Benton, number 5 on the ballot. Thank you.
Next candidate.
Thank you, Carl Vela, number 3 on the ballot, running as a Democrat to be elected on November 5th. In reference to compliance, the job of a senator is really to draft bills, deal with the budget, political appointees, confirmation. So in reference to compliance, it really honestly falls under the executive branch. And the legislature, as a branch that has oversight, has the ability to call individuals in to find out exactly what is taking place in reference to ADA compliance, in reference to disability rights, because the legislature has that opportunity to pass legislation, but the implementation is the executive branch. I know that someone is hired directly under the office of the governor that is supposed to deal with disability rights. I know that under the Department of Education is a whole division that is earmarked just to deal with students with disabilities. I know that there's voc rehab that is supposed to deal with students with disabilities or individuals with disabilities. So the big challenge is for the legislature to pull all those entities in and ask the relevant and pertinent questions as to exactly what is going on in that ADA world or in that world of disability. But for anyone to say that the legislature can make sure this or that, they only provide oversight. It is really on the executive branch, and I'm hoping that every disability organization that is listening begin to petition those individuals who are being paid to carry out that duty. Because if someone that's being paid as a coordinator in the office of the governor, what is actually taking place in that particular space? And that is what we need to do. If there is a need for additional legislation as a result of the disability groups meeting and needing additional stuff done, then that can be brought to the legislature, and the legislature definitely, I don't know one senator that won't pass that type of legislation. Call for number 3 on the ballot.
Next candidate, and the remainder, you have 2 minutes.
Good afternoon all. Lisa J. Charles, independent. For the senatorial candidate for the 36th legislature, I am number 17 on your ballot. Now, given what everyone just said, it is actually, I believe that is the case, but one step we can go further is that each department have a head. And what we do, we want to take care of our home. In instance, I come from the Department of Human Services. This department should be taking care of our humans, giving them services. So I think it's our responsibility to make sure our department and each aspect of our department or unit is built and directed to taking care of our disabled clients or clientels or potential clients. If there's the need, and the money's already appropriated, if that's a bill that has to be made, that each department is functioning to make sure that we can service this demographic of our population. Pretty much that's what that is. I don't see having to tap on everyone. We have to make, the only thing is to make sure that you write to your senators, call them, go to the department, speak to your agencies, tell them what your needs are, come to the senators, tell them what your needs are, what's not happening. We won't be able to tell you what's happening unless you tell us this is not happening at a particular department or a unit. It's very difficult going into a building and there's stairs that you have to climb, and you cannot climb stairs. The elevators are not working, so if that's the case, the department needs to make provisions for us that you can enter that building, or if not, they could make provisions for you to meet you someplace else. Lisa J. Charles, number 17 on your ballot.
Next candidate.
Kenneth Kenny Gittens, Democrat, number 14 on your ballot. Let me first say good afternoon to all and thank, you said, Voices account for not only inviting me here today, but also putting this together. I love that question and embrace it because as I sit here, I'm often wondering, am I in the right position, or should I be somewhat on the executive side as a compliance officer? We have so many laws on the books that are not being adhered to. But while the compliance portion is the responsibility of the executive branch, I still exercise my oversight responsibility as a legislator by ensuring that the laws that we put in place are actually being followed. For instance, we provide funding to the various agencies, 911 for instance, and we want to ensure that those in the disabled community has access to 911. If you're, and I hope I'm not using the wrong term, but if you're deaf or hard of hearing, we want to ensure that you're able to communicate with 911 emergency services as well. So we have ensured that they have the updated technology for you to be able to communicate your emergency with them. And that's through the TTY communication efforts. Currently, that is working. And what I've also done as the chairman of Homeland Security, Public Safety and Justice is to ensure that training is going on for these employees. So I will continue my efforts to always ensure that compliance is done. Kenneth Kenny Gittens, Democrat, number 14 on the ballot. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Norman Papo John Baptiste, number 13 on the ballot, no party candidate. Wow. God first. It took a partnership to put this program together. Several individuals, different groups coming together and putting an operation in place so that seamlessly we can have this program this afternoon. I, as an individual, would strive to be the eyes, the ears of those who are less fortunate than I am. I must learn to apply the rules of going over and beyond the call of duty. When I worked as a school teacher, if I heard students using obscene expressions in the hallways, I called the attention to the wrong that they were doing and seek corrective measures. As a senator, we have oversight responsibility. We have to work with other partners in this community to make sure that there is compliance, to make sure that funds are in place to get things done. When I walk around this community, if I see that there is no handicap access in certain areas, I have a responsibility to call upon those who are charged with that responsibility to see to it that it is done. And if there's a reason why it's not being done, and I'm in a position to change that, I must do that. We have to change our mindset in this community so that we have an attitude, an approach of love and compassion and feelings for each other, understand the needs of those who are less fortunate and in difficult circumstances. Once we embrace that kind of mindset and we understand that we must work in partnership, then all of us will pull our resources, our talents together to address the needs of all in the community so that no one is left behind. Thank you.
Good afternoon to all. Samuel Sandcarrier, number 6 on the ballot, no party. So if I understand correctly, the question is regards to compliance. As elected officials in the first branch of government, the legislature, we're not directly responsible for compliance. But what can we do as sitting senators in regards to that area? Well, one of the duties and responsibilities that we do have is oversight, like one of my colleagues mentioned, but we also deal with the purse string of government. So I think as senators, we can ensure that the agency that is responsible for compliance is properly funded. That's right. Once it's properly funded, then it could be properly staffed. Because sometimes we have agencies that are responsible for regulations and compliance, but they don't have the staff to go out to enforce the compliance component. And then that really serves no purpose. Just like we have legislations that are not enforced and implemented. So there is a gap there. So part of what we could do is, in our oversight responsibility, when we call these departments and agencies before us, in this instance, we have someone who is a coordinator or director of ADA within the office of the governor. Then is to ensure that compliance is being made and that funding is available to be able to carry out the duties and responsibilities of that office. If you don't have funding, then there's no vehicle, there's no transportation, there's not enough staff, there's not enough supplies, and all that you get is a lot of excuses. So if we're real about getting things done, then we need to ensure that all that is necessary to carry out that responsibility is available to the individual they're responsible for. But also advocating, speaking a lot of the issues, and sometimes pressure. And push it. Samuel carry on number 6 on the ballot.
Thank you all. We're going to begin with the second question under ADA-related questions. We're going to start with Mr. Norman Jean-Baptiste. We're going to go back to Samuel Carrion. Then we're going to go to Kenneth Gittins. As an elected official, what would you do to increase sensitivity about persons with disabilities through ADA awareness, education, and outreach, and enforcement of the ADA regulations in government and private offices and other public spaces?
Norman Bapo John Baptiste, number 13 on the ballot. No party candidate. There is an approach to bringing awareness or bringing about awareness that is called public outreach. This can be done by means of the use of media, the distribution of pamphlets and what have you, but more importantly, I want to be in touch with the community to understand what is going on and the needs of this community. Let me just tell you of the case of an individual in St. Croix who was disabled, being partially blind, in his home. And because they didn't have the necessary safety implements in place, a fire broke out. Neighbors heard the individual crying out. There were burglar bars on the windows. Fire personnel who responded couldn't get him out of the burning house. In spite of his screams, he died in that burning house. We have to be sensitive to those situations and to begin to share these concerns with community so that everyone becomes sensitized to the plight of those individuals. We must take steps to make sure that those safety implements are in place so that when such an individual finds himself or herself in a predicament, there is safety measures in place to address that. We live in a place where we are exposed to hurricanes and potentially tsunamis. As of now, we should be making plans. How do we respond to such individuals when there is a threat of a tsunami so that they can be evacuated safely? And so I'm saying it's an issue of being sensitive to those persons, reaching out to all of the community with our messages and our concerns, so that we can put in action steps to deal with that. Thank you.
Senator Harris.
number 6 on the ballot, no party. So I think part of what we all have a responsibility, and it begins with having the necessary conversations. We have to talk about the challenges, talk about the problems, talk about the issues, and we need to listen. So have forums like this where you're able to speak and share what your struggles are, share what the challenges are important to have. But also, as a senator, as I move legislation, I need to have you in mind and understand that you also deserve a seat at the table. And as we move legislation, to ensure that the legislation that we're moving also has a space and a range for space for you. So inclusion is important in all that we do. For example, in my case, I was moving Act 8, which is now law, Act 857, which is the IDEA Act. And what that does is mandating further digitalization of government records and services to be online. And as we're doing it, we're thinking about what about our community, our ADA community with disability, and how can we ensure that as the government moves in this direction, that the websites are built in such a way that people with hearing disability or sight disability are able to also access services from the government. And we ensure that we included that within the legislation to ensure as they're establishing standards for our government websites and links for our government websites, to ensure that they have features within the websites that are focused to provide access, just like anyone else, to individuals with a disability. Ability to have the words bigger, to be able to hear, all of that is important as we move forward. Samuel Sankario, number 6 on the ballot.
Thank you, Kenneth Kenny Gittens, Democrat number 14 on the ballot. Increasing sensitivity and ensuring access to private spaces and government offices. Everyone has the right or deserves access, that is, to public spaces and private businesses. The Virgin Islands Department of Justice is the agency tasked for enforcing these regulations. Again, as chairman of the Committee on Homeland Security, Justice, and Public Safety, I always try my best to cover as much grounds in ensuring that these agencies are fulfilling their duties and responsibilities. We all have a responsibility as well to be each other's eyes and ears, that when we're out in the public, if we should see a hurdle, and especially if you're someone without a disability, if you have a hurdle, imagine for someone else that may have a physical disability. It is your responsibility to report your whatever it is that you're seeing, the hurdle, to the agency or agencies that's responsible so that it can be addressed. One thing that I truly dislike is to see the conditions of our sidewalks. Our sidewalks, not only for persons with physical disabilities, but also for our young people that's traversing between home and going to school. There's no reason why they should have to walk in the roadway. This is a safety hazard, and the agencies responsible, in this case it will be Public Works, should in fact make sure that they address these things. So again, we all have a responsibility to this, and I'm hopeful that we will reach out to the Department of Human Services and the Department of Justice to ensure that updated technology is there and to get the information. Public service announcement is a way to go. Kenneth Kenny Gittens, Democrat number 14 on the ballot. Thank you.
I will read the question number 2 again, and we're going on the other side. We're going to begin with Lisa Charles, then Kurt Riley, and then Oakland Bennett. As an elected official, what would you do to increase sensitivity about persons with disabilities through ADA awareness, education, and outreach, and enforcement of the ADA regulations in government and private offices and other public spaces. Before you begin, let me remind everyone to please turn off or mute all of your devices. Thank you.
I am affirmed Lisa J. Charles, number 17, independent candidate for the senatorial race. I am a firm believer in education. Once you educate and cannot do it one time, you have to be consistent with it. Consistently doing outreach and reaching out to people who are unaware, believe it or not. We're aware of the situation, but there are a lot of people out there that are not aware of ADA. Honestly, they don't live it, they don't know what it's like. They don't live in your world, so they have no clue what it takes to have to live and be in your shoe. So I believe being consistent and going out there and making sure that our departments are doing outreach to make sure that everyone is aware of what is going on, and also in making plans before we make a decision, we are including you in our decisions. Whatever decisions are made, it affects not just the regular, what we call regular, but it affects everyone from youth to senior. So I would say doing outreach and consistently doing those outreach by partnering with you and everyone else out there that deals with ADA, and so we can do it on a consistent basis. And then for making sure compliance is done, is that, again, if you see I'm driving over a manhole and I drop it in a pothole, I don't work for Public Works, but I'm the one that's seeing it. I need to report it, I need to make sure that it's there, so make sure that we can address those situations, not because you are not in charge of it, but because you are aware of it.
Code Bill number 3 on the ballot. We need a public awareness campaign in which we're able to get that message out as to the issues that individuals with disability face on a regular basis. We also need to make sure that there's a certain level of understanding and sensitivity, because the Caribbean ain't the best place to live when you have a disability, because so many individuals are just not understanding of what a particular family is going through. So that's definitely an area that we need to improve in. But when you begin to think about what individuals with disability have to face on a regular basis, and you look at the infrastructure we presently have now, that makes it hard for somebody that is not disabled to navigate. You could only imagine what an individual with a disability has to go through on a regular basis. Our sidewalks are overgrown. It's not even around you. You don't even know if it's a sidewalk. So how does somebody with a white cane walk a sidewalk and it's filled with grass? The basic services are not there. And the basic services are impacting the population without a disability, and is definitely impacting the population with a disability. I had a conversation recently on a cruise with somebody that had a disability, and they said that they love St. Croix, but you can't navigate St. Croix, so they have to stay in the ship, on the ship, and everyone that has a disability has severe issues navigating Fredericton and Christiansted. And when you think about it, it's true. So we're going to have to be able to change the level of conversation from just UVI every 2 years, having a discussion, and then we go back to normalcy of doing literally nothing, to how are we going to be able to chip away at the issues that individuals with disability are facing on a regular basis.
10 seconds.
Are all the government offices compliant? Are all the private businesses compliant? If they're not, what entity is doing the evaluation process and telling them that they need to come up to speed? Call Bill number 3 on the ballot.
Thank you, Oakland Vendor number 5 on the ballot. I don't want to disenfranchise your thinking and your thoughts going forward. What we're discussing here today, there are people who are in these positions to serve the process. But unfortunately, over time, it is a forgotten journey that we've taken. And while we sit here, I'm trying to provide answers to you in this direction. The agencies that has the oversights, for decades, going forward, has failed to provide and produce. But we explain the best we can from the legislative side. With me, when it comes to service, the individuals and the oversight that the legislature has, we're an individual who is skilled in IT or skilled in some other business, but they can't walk or leave a bed. How do we employ them at home? Why are we taking the issues that are plaguing them and make sure that we facilitate the ability of the person to be serviced as a human being? You see, the intellect of discussion here with the humans of which we're speaking of the loved ones that we have, is far reaching that even the agencies that has the oversight don't have the time, or they're taking the time. It only becomes a discussion within the recent budget hearing we've had. And how do we really escape the idea that budgeting from the Government Accountability Office federally, based on documents that we should be providing to fund a lot of these processes, that the VI government has failed to submit the documents for the funding. And through the funding, it draws employment. It brings the employees to bear for the service, where the ADA agency, whom individuals sit in, has an oversight of. And we don't hear the complaints like we should, because everyone is quiet and don't understand the depth of the necessity of the program. Oakland Benton, number 5, and the ballot.
Next question. How will you, as an elected official, help the Virginians to comply with ADA regulations in government offices and other public places? We'll start with Senator Carrier.
Sounds almost like the first question. I'm not sure if you might be repeating the first. It's a repeat question.
Yeah, some of the questions are kind of repetitive. Well, go ahead.
Okay, fourth question. Again, under ADA related questions. Okay, we're going to start from Senator Carrier and go all the way to the end. What is your plan as an elected official to ensure that persons with disabilities have immediate access to sign language interpretation services in all government-funded healthcare facilities, government offices, and other public places? I will repeat. What is your plan as an elected official to ensure that all persons with disabilities have immediate access to sign language interpretation services in all government-funded healthcare facilities, government offices, and other public spaces?
Thank you for that question. I guess as an elected official in the Senate, part of our responsibility in the oversight capacity is to ask and recommend and suggest if we don't have a law already in place. Being someone who is bilingual and an interpreter, certified interpreter, I understand the challenges when you reach to a government agency and you don't have the information in your language. I was able to take also sign language through UBI's program that they had here, and I know that many individuals sometimes approach different government agencies seeking services, and unfortunately they're faced with the challenge that one, you might not have someone who speaks your language, or you might not have someone who is a sign language individual. And that really puts you at a disadvantage. So in my questioning to many government agencies, I ask them, what system you have in place, who have you hired, what's the list of the contractors that you have that can provide these type of services to members of our community who might be challenged in one of these areas. So for me, this is very important, and that's one of the reasons also I even looked within the Department of Education, and one of the bills that I moved, which was Act 8555, had to do with bilingual English language learner, because even in that section we realized that there was a challenge and some of our students were being disfranchised and were at a disadvantage, because when we speak about equality and parity, we notice that sometimes within our community, we don't have those type of services available for everyone. So if it's not within our law, then we have to legislate and ensure that government agencies have this service to provide to individuals that have this disability or have these challenges. And if it is, then it's implementation and trying to have conversations with the branch of government to ensure that they implement and carry out these responsibilities that are established by code. So that's one of the areas that I think I would focus on. Samuel Sam Carino, number 6 on the ballot.
Norman Babu John Baptiste, number 13 on the ballot, no party candidate. I want us to understand what ADA stands for. It's the American with Disabilities Act. Provides broad provisions for accessibility of services and other amenities to disabled persons. Locally, we have a responsibility, and there are funds in place to make sure that all of these things are carried out. So it means that our local government has failed in several respects. The signs, the implements in terms of having access to media services, etc. All of this should have been in place. And if it is not being done, the legislature has a responsibility in terms of oversight. That's where sensitivity comes in, sensitivity to issues. And as a senator moves around his or her community and sees what is not being done and where we're not providing services and access for disabled persons, then it's your responsibility as a senator to get together with your colleagues, have the appropriate meetings with other government partners so that we can address the situation. It is not being done. Why it's not being done? Are there funds available? And if the funds have not been appropriated, let's move to appropriate the funds and make funds available to get the services done. Basically, that's what it is, folks. But the laws are in place. ADA laws in place, which requires compliance, and clearly we are not being compliant here in the territory. That's the reason why the sidewalks are how they are. That the markings for handicap parking, etc., you can hardly see that in some instances. These things need to be addressed, they need to be corrected, and it begins with every individual being sensitive to the concerns of the disabled. Thank you. Norman Marco John Baptiste, number 30 on the ballot.
Kenneth Kenny Gittens, Democrat number 14 on the ballot. Thank you for that. And this goes hand in hand with the name of the group here today, Voices That Count. And we need to ensure that our voices do count. And I could only imagine that it was the voices speaking loudly why in, I think it was July of 1990, that the American Disabilities Act was put in place. And as this act is in place, of course, we have to continue to enhance it. So what I will do is I will continue to work with my colleagues in the legislature, reach out to the Congresswoman and the Governor of the Virgin Islands to ensure that we have these vital services within our government agencies. Particularly what we need to look at is the funding to provide the necessary training for employees within the respective agencies, and especially our key agencies that have direct contact with the community. And we will probably need to put in a stipend for that employee to be able to perform these services, just like we do for hiring someone that is bilingual to speak 2 different languages, whether English and in Spanish or English and French, whatever, but there's a stipend that's provided there. So again, I will continue to work with my colleagues and reach out to our Washington representative and the governor to ensure that these vital services are put forward, such as the sign language. Kenneth Gittins, Democrat, number 14 on the ballot.
Thank you. Lisa J. Charles, number 17 on your ballot. That's a very good question. I will let you to know that it's very difficult when you're going to have people that's going to be interpreting and not getting paid for it. And a lot of employees don't mind having to interpret whether it's different language or doing sign language. And I think if we, like Senator Gittins says, if we afford them a different pay rate to do that, I'm pretty sure there will not be that problem to do it because it is their job. We have to educate them. This comes where sensitivity comes in. It's very difficult having someone come to your desk and you cannot communicate with them. We don't pick who comes to your desk. Someone comes to your desk, and if it means that that person at the time needs sign language, and you cannot communicate with that person, or that person has to wait another 2 hours until they can find someone that can actually speak the language to them. So I think if we educate, put out for incentives for them to learn the sign language, learn whatever other languages there are, and increase the pay, that would make them want to do this, and actually we will actually help more people in the community, and including Braille in that. I know we only spoke about sign language, but Braille as well needs to be there, because our documents that we have does not include those who cannot see, not just hear. Lisa J. Charles, number 17 on your ballot.
Thank you. A very good question. A question that we're facing in the Virgin Islands, to me, in all professional fields, in which you have a limited amount of individuals that have the requisite skills to be able to perform a particular function. You raise $10,000 right now for sign language interpreters, and you're going to find a handful of individuals who meet the qualifications that they will be able to work at facility and perform those particular duties. So the first one is that we need education and training. And the real sign language interpreter isn't a couple months or 1 year. It's a process. Because so tell them they're saying almost 4 to 5 years to really become skilled at what you're doing. So we're going to have to make sure that we have an education component and that we're able to pay some young individuals to become interpreters with an understanding that they have to work in the Virgin Islands in the health institutions after they receive this particular scholarship. That's the first thing we need to do. And then we need to incentivize those particular positions to make sure that those individuals stay here. It's hard when you have somebody that's here and here and the rest of the world don't know. I know that everybody saw a recent video in which a here and here guy on the mainland was violently attacked by police officers because they gave him a directive and he couldn't be here. So the party was not compliant and ended up it being a really bad situation. As we move forward, we have to look at all of these areas and see exactly what we need and then come up with specific solutions as to how we're going to be able to achieve them. And the funding is an issue. Because the former chair of the Finance Committee will definitely fund the opportunity to have individuals that are going to go through this particular procedure. So I'm glad you came on. because it's also something, if I'm successful, that I'll definitely look into in reference to funding those particular areas. Oh, God, number 3 and 5.
Complemented number 5 on the ballot. The ADA Act, based on how it was put in place, if a violation of the Act has occurred, it's not a federal or arrestable offense to an individual who falls in the category. It's a civil act where you can sue. The individuals who is the director of the ADA, what needs to happen is we need to arm that agency with enforcement authority, that they can go out to agencies and see what's going on, and through the Attorney General's office, when they empower them, that the VI government can take action. But the VI government itself, because of our shortfalls, we have to set the stage for the example first. The Act creates the avenue for the funding, federally as well, so that we can hire people under the grants that exist. But we're not moving through the completing the grant process because the government of the Virgin Islands has not audited its accounts. Straightforward. And if we do audit the accounts, the disenfranchisement that takes place because of negligence creates another store of adverse conditions for this territory. So the ADA side and the disability, at this point, is a second tier to the government of the Virgin Islands, really. And sometimes it's hard to speak it like it is, because I too might put my finger on myself, because there's a lot of things that we've missed for decades, not just today, when it comes to the services that are not provided to those who need. And today, as I asked earlier when I spoke, I hope that the individuals who have hearing impairment are also being able to hear what we're saying today. I said it for a reason, as the mayor just mentioned, with an individual mental issue, because he couldn't hear, and actions were taken that wasn't good when it came to the individuals. Complemented number 5 minutes of it.
Next question. Act 8686 created a disability integration unit inside of TINA. In your term, what will you do to ensure that these positions will be filled? We will start with former Senator Don Baptiste.
Thank you. Norman Babu John Baptiste, number 13 on the ballot, no party candidate. If we have legislation in place, created by whatever legislature that created it, clearly 86 is by the current legislature, I assume. If the legislation is in place making certain provisions and it